my friend had said, you can stay in my office, which is an office building in Koreatown, because I needed a surgery desperately, and I couldn't get it in Texas because I didn't have insurance. So everybody, because I didn't have any money, right? Everyone that wants me to get away from scrapes up money to get me to LA. And when I get to LA, I was in her office building. She found out that I was still talking to, and she lost it. And so she told the security people in the office building that I was there. So they come up to the suite and they're like, you have to leave. And I knew the office building manager, and he said, okay, I'm gonna get you a hotel for the weekend, and then you figure it out, you know what I mean? So he got me a hotel, and then that first or second day, probably the first day, right, because I'm freaking out, I don't know what to do, I called 211, and I told them that I was about to be extremely homeless, extremely. I was already homeless, but I was about to be on the street homeless. And they had said to go to this address, and it was 6th and San Pedro. So the next day, I must have taken the bus. I don't know. I honestly have no money, so I don't know how anything's going on. And then I get to 6th and San Pedro, and that was the first time I'd ever seen Skid Row. That was the first time I'd ever heard of Skid Row. I remember walking down that street, and I remember thinking, how does this exist in the United States? Genuinely, how does it exist? It was just terrible. But there was a shelter, and on one side it said Hope Row, and so I go in there, and I explain everything. Like, people think you just get into a shelter, but it's not like that. You have to get a TB test. You have to establish that you're homeless. The TB test takes 72 hours. And so you have to go to a place, take the TB test. You can't go to the shelter because they won't let you in until you take the TB test. So I did that.
And so you're 72 hours literally on the street?
No. I did have one friend, and that was still my friend. And he had said, this is the part that I'm very proud of. He had said that I could stay with him. And so I stayed with him for that 72 hours because I didn't know if they were going to let me in, right? And I was really freaking out. I don't know what's going on. And I go back, and they had a place for me. It's called the Open Door Program. It lasts 3 months. July 3rd, 2015 at 12:55 a.m. First day in a shelter. I am so happy to be here. My heart is exploding. Being here and getting it in at all and immediately without having to go on a wait list is the first real big break I've felt in a long time. Genuinely, I feel that way. It's as if I got my 4-leaf clover back. It has been years, and I did it all by myself. When I pee, the door doesn't lock, and there is a urinal right next to the sink. The window next to the toilet is squat level and 3 feet by 3 feet and wide open. So when you stand up to put your panties on, all of Skid Row can see. Okay, I'm not gonna use that word. Okay, I'll skip that part too. I'm so happy to have a home. So far, my impression is that it's been a bit in between being in a psych ward and being in prison, except we're allowed to leave and I can shave my legs with a razor, unlike in the psych ward, and I've never been in prison, so I do have that going for me. Thank you, God, for getting me in here and giving me the strength to persevere through all of the everything. It's the first big break I've had in a long time. I'm enthused about the opportunities I have now to find work and get back on my feet and save money. So I didn't have to stay in a shelter. I could have stayed with. I was so embarrassed of the situation I was in, but this is the part that I'm really proud of, because had said so many times that I'd only gotten as far as I had in any aspect of my life because of the people I know and because of the way I look, which I'm not to say I was prettier before, but it was a long time ago, so I was prettier and younger anyway. And so when I was there, I had this opportunity to work myself up from scratch. I mean, basically from the gutter. And this is something I'm so proud of. No one can ever, 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 ever say that I only got so far because of the way I look or the friends that I have. And the way that I look was actually, it jeopardized my safety there. Because I'm this white girl that couldn't fucking walk well. Like, I couldn't run away because my foot was for real fucked up. I had to wear an orthopedic shoe because I literally couldn't do anything to run. And people made assumptions about me. But like, I worked really hard. I worked so hard to get out of there. And I say that I did it on my own, but I did need social services, right? Like, I got on GR, I got an Obama phone. And but this whole time, I'm hooked up with services at the Hollywood Department of Mental Health, right, where I'm getting my DPT. So all of those things, and then I started interviewing, and then I remember I had an interview at Bloomingdale's. It was just kind of surreal, right? I'm going from Skid Row to the Beverly Center, and then nobody would have known what I was going through at that time. There was no way anybody could have known unless I told them, and I didn't tell anybody because I was embarrassed. But yeah, this was the first time where I was, able to really prove my worth, and I was task driven, and I was miraculously able to get along with everybody, and it didn't start off like that.
How did it not start off like that, and how were you able to
People were vicious in the beginning.
Like, what were they like?
There was a lady who, I was going to the Bloomingdale's, so I was going to the Bloomingdale's interview, so I was all dressed up, right? And she sees me, and she starts coming, like, and I'm, walking, I've got my orthopedic, thing on this foot, and I don't know what it was, but it was like this baton, and she goes like that, and it unfurls. And then I started walking backwards, because remember, I can't run away, and I said, I live here too. And then, but she's coming at me. I think she must have thought I was something other than what I am, right? Because she just sees this white girl, like, dressed up. You know what I mean? People had the wrong idea about me, which is understandable, right? A lot of things had to go wrong for me to go from a 2-bedroom apartment in the East Village to the 10th floor of a shelter on Skid Row. A lot of things had to go wrong, right? Honestly, the 6-month medical leave, the office that I was working for, moving to San Francisco, the injury, then the boyfriend with the disability and everything, then the friend, and, getting kicked out of the office. But a lot of things had to go wrong for me to get into that situation. But for a lot of the people that live in Skid Row, it's not too far away from the reality that they grew up with. And I think that it's not fair. It's really not, right? So there probably are resentment issues there. I did have to be aggressive sometimes. I think at one point, they were calling me crazy Mary Poppins or something, because you have to stand up for yourself.
So what do you do when they do that? When they call you like crazy Mary Poppins?
No, that was just, it was kind of funny, right?
Yeah, that's kind of cute.
Yeah, but you have to, and it's not just me, everybody does. You can't let someone walk all over you, because if you do, bad things are gonna happen. I don't know what would happen, but bad things are gonna happen.
Were you in touch with your friends at this point, or friends that you had still retained, or did anyone know you were there?
Anybody who knew that I was in LA was gonna know about it, just because they knew why I was over there, and they knew that it had gone south within 2 weeks. So, but not very many people, even on my Instagram, like, there's just this, I didn't post, like, it's just a blank, like, 2 years of nothing. No, I didn't want anybody to know. My mom knew, and I'm gonna give her credit on this. She had said, you can come back home. And I said, no. Obviously knew about it, and had actually come to LA to see me, and when I was at the shelter, and here's this person that we'd had such an abusive relationship, and then he flies to LA to see me. He got an Airbnb for the weekend or something. Within a night, we're back at, like, fighting, right? Where he's abusive and I'm saying mean things, probably. I don't remember. I just remember that happening immediately. The first night, and I don't even know why. And then he just dropped me off. And then I remember some of the people at the shelter being like, he doesn't love you. He wouldn't have you here not have me here, but he wouldn't be okay with it. And in my mind, it wasn't like that. In my mind, this was how I didn't want anyone to save me from that. I wanted to be able to prove to everybody that I could do this. And on top of that, I had allowed myself to be brainwashed. I remember saying to him multiple times, I don't deserve to be happy. The only thing that I have in my life that I need to be doing is make other people's lives better. Like things like that. I mean, and I felt that way for a while. And not that not that I've gotten that far away from that, but I don't know if happiness is even a thing anyway, but whatever. That's a different story. That's a different subject. That's different. And whatever.
Yeah. I mean, because it really sounds like this, I mean, and what's different for you than maybe a lot of the other people who were on and are on Skid Row, right, is you could have chosen not to be there, right?
Yeah.
And you chose to be there because you were like, I have to figure this out.
Yeah.
Do you think people sensed that you were there for a
know.
slightly different,
I don't know.
you know, where I mean, you had to be there to survive, like, psychically.
Yeah.
And they
They were
maybe
there
didn't
because-
have quite, they didn't have the luxury even of that
Making
decision.
that choice. Yeah.
And I wonder if they can probably feel the difference of socioeconomic, even you're educated
Yeah.
and
No, I'm sure.
things like that, they could
yeah,
sense. and
definitely.
I'm sure that came across.
Yeah,
and
there was a lot of resistance to me in the beginning. I had a therapist at the Weingart, that's the name of the shelter, and she was only on Mondays, so she only had, I want to say 7 or 8 clients that she would see, and she had even told me I wasn't going to pick you to be one of the people that I would see. And I don't know if it was because of the borderline personality disorder. I'm not sure, but she was transparent about that pretty early on. And she's actually one of the reasons I decided to go back to school to be a social worker. And it's not the irony, but I have her job now as an intern because I'm the one who's providing the therapy to the clients at a transitional shelter. She had quite a bit of an impact on my life.
So so how did you get from
The shelter
to going
Yeah.
back to school?
Yeah. So
and also, what do you think, like, borderline mental health wise, like, what do you think? I mean, it's like this was almost like a rehab for you.
that's what she
Yeah.
said too. She said it was a boot camp, basically.
Yeah, it's a boot camp for
Yeah. And I wrote that down too because it really did make an impression on me.
Right.
She said, "You're in a boot camp," and it's true. It
Right.
really forced
And
me.
because the people in your life were the opposite of a boot camp.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And you were like, I'm never gonna make it
Yeah.
if I stick around.
Yeah. Yeah, and I didn't, honestly, what had said all those times, I really, I don't want to be that person that I really wanted to be able to kind of make my way.
Yeah.
So, and I don't want anyone to ever be able to say that about me, ever again. Oof. Anyway, so to get into the housing situation, so I was waiting for the Section 8 to go through, and then it did go through, and I'm not on it anymore because I don't need it anymore. And then in April of May of 2016, that's when I got the apartment. And then I went to school that summer. So I get the apartment and then I go to school. And that's why, not to start preaching here, I wouldn't have been able to get to where I am now if I hadn't had housing. So housing first. Like housing first. If you provide housing, if not you, but if our society provides housing, then and it's statistically proven, like it's evidence-based, then people's lives will improve. Even people who have drug and alcohol problems, it's not, some people will continue to have those problems, but for other people, it gets better. And also it costs less because when people are out on the street, there's incarcerations, there's hospitalizations. So it's not just a good policy, it's a good fiscal policy. And the other thing is universal health care. And I'm just gonna go on this too. In Houston, I couldn't get my surgeries. So I don't even know if I would have a leg. I really don't, because I wasn't able to get surgeries while I was there. And it wasn't until I got to California where I had Medi-Cal that I was able to get those surgeries. So, and I wasn't able to get any social services in Houston because Texas is very conservative. So I couldn't have the surgeries I needed to go back to work. And so now I finished my undergraduate, I'm in grad school, I have my internship. I know that nobody would know from looking at me what I've been through. And I deliberately make myself look a certain way because I don't want people to know that kind of thing. And also I think it just makes it easier to navigate life. But all of this is to say I know everybody has a story. Every single person has a story. It's just a matter of talking to them and finding out what that story is, and not to make assumptions about people. Because I get so mad when people make assumptions about me, but then I do it too. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Now I'm not going to say I'm back to where I was in New York, but I'm self-sufficient. I pay for my apartment. You know what I mean? Like it's not discounted. all of those things, and I'll graduate in May, and then I'll be a social worker. So that's cool. That's my TED Talk.